1.
Another beautiful day for some Friday night baseball. Orioles taking on the Astros, opening up a 3-game series tonight on MASN 2. Coverage starting at 6:30. Dylan Bundy going up against Wade Miley, and a lot happening at the ballpark tonight. Welcome into MASN All Access. I'm your host, Paul Mancano. The 1989 Why Not Orioles. They're back in town tonight to be celebrated in front of the fans and before tonight's game. And of course, Friday Fireworks and Women of Country Music Series continues tonight. So a lot going on here at the ballpark. Let's get to the starting pitching matchup tonight. As mentioned, Wade Miley, our old friend, going up against Dylan Bundy. Bundy so far this season, a 5.15 ERA, 5-11 record. His last start back on August 3rd allowed just 2 earned runs in 5 1/3 innings against the Toronto Blue Jays. Wade Miley, historically not great at Oriole Park at Camden Yards, an ERA close to 5.5, but he's having a good year with the Astros so far. ERA just a tick over 3 and already 10 wins. So it's Bundy going up against Miley tonight at Oriole Park at Camden Yards. Again, 6:30, coverage beginning on MASN 2. Chris Davis has received quite a lot of attention since the events of Wednesday night's game against the New York Yankees, and he met with the media earlier today. Take a look.
What actually happened was the inning before on defense for me was really the reason I was so frustrated. I missed a pick. Wasn't an easy play. Wasn't a particularly hard play. And a couple pitches later, I think they hit a 2-run home run and took it from a 4-1 game to a 6-1 game. And for me, that was really the kind of the breaking point. I think it's pretty obvious the offensive struggles I've had for quite some time. I feel like night in and night out, I've done a really good job of still being there on defense and trying to pick guys up. And for me, at that spot in the game, at that point in the series, that was just kind of where it all, like I said, I hit a breaking point. And it's going to happen. It's going to happen when you have that much frustration, when you're constantly having to deal with failure. You're going to have episodes where you just you have to let it out. Unfortunately, it was in the dugout. I wish it hadn't have been. I wish it had been underneath. But it happened, and I can't go back and change that. Brandon and I have talked. I knew right after it happened that we were going to be fine. It was just one of those things, and we are. I mean, like I said, it happens over a course of a season. As a young team going into the season, and all the challenges that you're going to face, everything that you're going to have to try to overcome. That there are going to be nights where it's frustrating, and that's kind of really, for me, that's what happened. It all boiled over, and it wasn't just from that play. I mean, for me, it's been, for the last couple of weeks. I stuck around, but I wanted to be out of the clubhouse by the time guys started coming in, just to be respectful to them. I mean, obviously, it wasn't a highlight or a high point for me, but I just thought it was best to be out of there by the time guys started coming off the field, just to give everybody time to cool off.
Sitting down with 2 members of the 1989 Why Not Orioles, Greg Olson and Dave Johnson. Guys, thanks so much for joining us.
You bet, Paul.
Thank you.
So the 1989 team, you're back here for your 30th anniversary. You guys are obviously here all the time, but what's it like seeing some of your former teammates, some of whom may be back for the first time since they played?
Well, yeah, I mean, this is a great opportunity. And I was talking to Jeff Ballard a little bit, and then I was like, they should have something in baseball where you can actually get together every 5 or 10 years and just see your guys.
Right.
We spend so much time together. Every day, you're with each other 12, 13, 14 hours a day in and day out. And you become family, close friends.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, you're with a different team. And then you may not see that person ever again. And many times it's not like, hey, goodbye, or hey, good seeing you. Oh, hey, give me your number, or whatever kind of deal. It's just one day you're here and one day you're gone. And it's just, that's the weird thing about baseball.
Well, we didn't have cell phones back then either, so it wasn't like we were trading numbers or emails. And
I just remember just coming up, and I hadn't seen Craig Worthington, I don't think, since '91.
Wow.
Harnish, when he got traded, probably the last time I saw him, unless I ran across him in the league. We're just running through it. I've seen Orsolak and the Ripkins, but there was 3 or 4 guys, Ballard, I haven't seen since he left here.
Right. Wow.
Just disappeared, and I told Worthington last night, I was like, dude, you just went dark. And he goes, yeah. He goes, no social media, I got nothing. And I was like, yep.
It's probably a nicer life that way. Just stay out
Oh,
of
yeah,
it.
but, and then you come back to this, and it's just like we never left. It's the same stuff, same jokes.
Yeah. It's such a fascinating story because obviously you celebrate championship teams, and that this team obviously wasn't there, but it's a fascinating story that I think every Orioles fan who lived through that season in Baltimore has such great memories of that team, and they remember it up with like the '83 team and the teams that won that championship. Why do you guys think, in your opinions, that team was so special?
It was talking to Jamie Quirk, and he's like, one of the most bizarre things to celebrate a team who got second place. And then I went, yeah, you remember we had a parade after the season. It was I don't know what it was so much fun to watch. The defense was special. Everybody was making plays, and for 6 months, somebody, who knows who's going to be the hero that night, but that was the way it was. It was every night. It was Davey, and then the next night it was Devo, and then the next night it was Orsolak, and it was just every night. It was just a fun team to play on, fun team to watch. I don't know. I have no explanation.
Yeah. Being from here, and then being here basically every day since then, I do run into a lot of people who say, you know what, I love our World Series championships teams and the 66, the 83, or the 70, whatever. We love all our great teams. But that 89 season, that team is my favorite team. And I'm like, that doesn't kind of make sense, but it does, because so many people have the stories of, getting on the bus and taking the 22 and going up to Memorial Stadium and catching 30 or 40 games out of the 81 home games, and that to me is just they kind of lived that season with us. And there's just countless people who really do feel like, for whatever reason, that 89 season was more special than even some of the World Series championship teams.
That's amazing. And especially on the heels of the 88 season, the fans really could have used that kind of season and that season that you guys had to get back into it. Let's start with the starter, Davey, because you obviously started the season with AAA. Then you went up to the big leagues at the very beginning of August, and you had 7 starts in August and 7 starts in September, including 4 complete games over that stretch. You could never see anything like that ever again, I feel like.
Well, no, I don't think it'll happen now.
Yeah.
I mean, I pitched decent in my first start in Fenway Park, enough to where I think I pitched into the 7th inning, which, heck, nowadays they'd give me about $6 million a year just for going into the 7th, even if I lost.
Yeah.
But so, and then a week later, I didn't pitch for another week, and then a week later, Al Jackson said, hey, you're pitching tomorrow, and I said, okay, so I pitched against the Twins. I remember giving up a line drive to Joe Orsolak was playing right field, and Al Newman hit a line drive to him, and Joe came in, like always, trying to dive and catch the ball, do everything he could, and he lost it in the lights. It went for a triple. I'm like, oh, this is not going well. And unfortunately, the run ended up scoring, but here I was, and after 9 innings, we win 6-1. And then Boston comes to town 5 days later, and I pitch, and I give up a run in the first, and I pitched 9 innings. We win 6-1. And then that Monday, I'm named American League Player of the Week. I'm like, this is crazy. This is crazy talk. And then my next game, I got hammered against Milwaukee, but then I pitched 9 innings the next day. So 3 out of 4 starts and 3 out of my first 5 in the big leagues were complete games. But that was just that wasn't actually special. That was just something we did. If you were pitching well, Frank left you in. If you weren't pitching well and he needed somebody to close it out, then they bring in Willie and they bring in Otter, and they would do that. But they just, we only had probably a 10-man pitching staff, so if you didn't need a reliever, you didn't bring one in just to bring one in. So that's the way it was. And 7 out of the 14 starts on 3 days to I had no idea. I had to go back and look at Baseball Reference and go and count the days. I'm like, wait a minute. I pitched 7 times on 3 days rest.
That was what I was doing
earlier. That's crazy,
earlier.
but
that's amazing.
It's just what, Frank said, you're pitching, and you're like, Well, you didn't say no, you're not.
Yeah.
You just went out and pitched.
Yeah. And Greg, you were available pretty much all the time, being the closer. I saw you didn't allow an earned run in the final 2 months of the season, and you were just 22 at the time, correct?
Yeah.
Were you aware of how special that was and what you were doing at such a young age?
I really wasn't. I had gotten ice cold right after the All-Star break, and I went about 2 weeks where I blew some saves and got whatever was wrong squared away starting August 1st, and just got hot and couldn't afford. We really couldn't afford me to screw anything up at that point.
Yeah.
I had run out of my leverage of window of opportunity to screw up some games. I did that all in July, and after that we started chasing Toronto, and it was just one of those where, all right, here's a 1-run lead, you got to go, keep it. And I was like, okay. So I didn't think about it, didn't run through it. Just at the end of the season, I looked back and I went, I didn't give up a run for 2 months. That's pretty cool.
That is pretty amazing. And you, of course, mentioned Frank Robinson because he has had such a big impact on that team. What kind of impact in your mind did he have on that team? What kind of manager was he with you guys?
Well, with me, Otter spent the whole year with him, and I didn't. I was only there 2 months for him. Now, I did spend, all 90 with him, but, it's one of those deals where as a manager, if that manager takes interest in you and gives you a chance to succeed, and then maybe when you fail a little bit, but they'll then hang with you and have you go out there. Frank was so big to me. I mean, I was a kid growing up here and I watched Frank play. I mean, I had the 500 home run poster, on my, closet door in my bedroom. I mean, Frank Robinson was a baseball god when I was 8, 9, 10 years old. And then have the opportunity to actually play for him here in Baltimore. It was so cool. He was bigger than life to me, but what Frank did was he was one that at some point decided that you're pitching today and then you're pitching this day or that day. He was the one that made that call. So to me, Frank was so instrumental in me, being here today, getting an opportunity because, for the next few years, Frank Robinson, gave me the opportunity to go out there and pitch every 3 or 4 days, and I couldn't ask any more of it.
For me, Frank was, my first major league manager. So he gave me the ball and trusted me and kept throwing me out there. And we had a weird relationship where, he was great to me. And I loved playing for Frank. But I remember, like you said, I'm 22 years old, and there was a game that we had a fog game. And again, I don't know any better. And so Mark Williamson goes out in the 9th inning in fog game, and we end up losing because somebody lost one in the fog. And I went walking right in after the game into Frank's office, and I was like, that was my game. Why didn't you pitch me? And he shuts the door, and we talk, and I go walking out, and Al Jackson, our pitching coach, looks at me and goes, you can't do that. And I was like, why? That was Frank. Frank allowed me to just do that, and we had a great relationship of where I could go in and ask why or what, and he would answer me, and he was so terse with the media and everybody else, and he just had this image, but I could just walk in and shut the door and ask him why he didn't pitch me that night.
Yeah.
And it's just beyond my thinking. After playing 14 years, I'd never walk into a manager and go, you didn't pitch me, what are you doing?
Yeah, and now that you guys have gotten to catch up a little bit, it's still early in the day and you still have the rest of the night to celebrate with your former teammates, but have you had conversations with your former teammates about Frank and remembering his legacy with your team?
I haven't talked to anybody really about Frank. We did mention, of course, Tom Davis mentioned during the luncheon about him and his passing and what he meant to the team, and he did ask a couple players, and as I echoed, just a couple seconds ago, that what he meant to me, and I was fortunate. I pitched in the big leagues. I got to pitch for Jim Leland, Frank Robinson, a little bit for Johnny Oates, and then Sparky Anderson. So, I had some guys that were obviously Frank, great player, Hall of Famer. Also, some other guys ended up being some really good managers. So, when I sit back and go, wow, the 4 managers that I actually got to pitch for at the big league level, Frank's pretty special.
Yeah.
I can't talk highly enough of Frank. He meant a lot to me, and we've talked about how special his clubhouse was. He was part of the family. Yeah, it was hard, and he had to let guys go and bring guys up, and that was the business part of it all. But for me, he was part of the family, and our relationship stayed. Every time I saw him at a card show or back here in Baltimore, it was, how's your family? How's everything going? And catching up, and I'm going to miss him.
Yeah, I'm sure a lot of fans will agree with you as well. And he'll certainly be part of the festivities and will be remembered tonight as well. So I was going through the baseball reference page, and obviously I had seen the roster before, but I was amazed at how young some of the talented guys on that team. Cal Ripken Jr. was like one of the elder statesmen at age 28 on that team.
He was the elder statesman.
I feel like he was that from pretty much when he came up at that point. But Brady Anderson was 25. Ben McDonald, of course, was a rookie. Devo was 26. So many of these young, talented guys. You look at this current Orioles team, obviously very young and obviously at the beginning stages of this rebuild. Obviously still a little bit too, maybe a little too late at this point for them to have a why not season. But when you look at this roster and the fact that there are so many young, exciting players and the fact that they have a future ahead of them, do you see maybe a little bit of similarities in the way that that team was constructed in '89 and the way this one is?
The biggest difference I see is that first of all, I think it's harder to pitch in the big leagues now than it was when I pitched. The ballparks, for the most part, are smaller. The strike zone even seems to be smaller. The balls are made out of, they're super balls or something. The way they're traveling out of the ballpark. So I almost kind of feel bad to some extent for the pitchers, but I also think that the problem with the club right now is simply that there's a lot of guys that they do have who are very talented. And when I talk about talent, we talk about velocity and things like that. But a lot of them just don't still seem to have the command of the ball. They just can't duplicate and replicate their delivery and quality pitches. They throw a good fastball to get ahead. They'll throw a great slider. It's 0-2. Then they try to throw another great slider, and it backs up and goes right down the middle, and the guy hits it 385 feet for a home run. You're like, not that I never did that. Of course I did, but they seem to do it with too much regularity now.
Yeah.
And that's the problem now, that you got to have good pitching. And we had so many different types of pitchers on that '89 team. Obviously, Bally won, 18, and Malacky had won a bunch of games, and so did Harnish. And I was only there for 2 months, but there was guys that just, chipped in here and there, and a lot of guys were still kind of veteran pitchers. In other words, they, like myself, I pitched 3 or 4 years in AAA before I actually came up with the Orioles. Some of these guys now are coming up with very limited minor league, high-level experience, and I think that's why they're struggling a bunch at the big league level so much.
I think there are pieces here. You looked at our roster and, got the question all the time before the season started between '88, '89, and how this was going to work coming off of last year.
Yeah.
And I just kind of looked at, the roster and our roster going, man, we had a bunch of guys that were 23, 24, 25. Not so much here. A lot of homegrown guys in '89. Everybody was homegrown.
Yeah.
And not so much here. And so, there are pieces. It's a longer process. We overhauled the whole roster from '88 to '89.
Yeah.
There wasn't that many guys that came back from the '88 team. I was there for a month. Schilling was there for a month.
Yeah.
There wasn't a whole lot of the guys that were started in the season, other than the Ripken brothers and maybe Williamson and Schmitty.
Yeah, pretty much.
So. They're doing it a little bit here, so it's going to take a little bit longer, I think.
Yeah, well, still probably some similarities, but great analysis, of course, about how times have changed. It has been 30 years. I'm sure it doesn't feel like that for you guys.
No, it doesn't.
But enjoy the rest of the day.
Thank
I'm
you.
sure you're going to enjoy being with your former teammates and enjoying the celebration tonight. So we appreciate you guys coming on here.
You bet.
Thank you.
Thanks, Paul.
Greg Olson and Dave Johnson joining us here on MASN All Access.
I've changed my mind on reunions. I never thought about reunions in a way that says you want to go back in time. But the opening day team here we had a couple of years ago, the first team that played in Camden Yards, I got a chance to see, Mike Messina. Mike goes off and does his thing, and you don't see him for a while. And so this was really good. The '89 team was a really good group of guys. We all hung out. We all liked each other. And it was really great seeing a bunch of the guys back again. So I think I like reunions now.
You played on a lot of great teams, but this team wasn't this team wasn't a playoff team.
Well, it didn't turn out to be.
It didn't turn out to be. But is it, in a way, is it more special than some of those playoff teams?
Well, I think coming off the '88 season and the nightmare of the '88 season in many ways for us, the guys that experienced that had to become better teammates and support each other a little bit better. So there was a benefit from going through something so negative. And then the expectation was kind of low in '89, but we had a new influx of talent. We had some rabbits that were running around the outfield catching everything that was hit. We had some enthusiasm that came from hope and winning that started opening day. So it was a fun season. As the grind of the season wore on, I wouldn't say we became exposed, but we came back to earth a little bit. We had a really good start. But we found ourselves in the end of the season right where we wanted to be, with a chance to win in Toronto. And we really, in our minds, had them beat the first two games, and they came back with their experience, and they tied the game up and won it late, and snatched our going from worst to first season away from us. But none of us in the room after the game was over, when we had no chance, we got eliminated. We thought it was a failure. We all thought it was an extremely successful season. We were all very proud of what we were able to do. And that was a good group of guys in that clubhouse.
How about that first game of '89? You're coming off '88, and then you wind up beating Roger Clemens here, and you had a big part in that.
Yeah, I mean, that was exciting. And, we were talking about it, and I relived my 3-run homer against Roger. Roger, I think, struck me out the first two times, and it felt like my bat was underwater. He was throwing really hard, threw the ball up in the strike zone. And I came up with a chance to help the team with a couple of guys on. And I got down 0-2 quickly, and I fought and battled back, and I ended up hitting the ball that went out of the ballpark and left. But if you remember right, they came back and tied the game up, and Craig Worthington won the game with a sac fly. And to have him in that position, and to have him, step in there and become clutch and win that game, he had a lot of big hits after that first opening day. But I think it started us off in the right way, and it framed our hope.
This current team is struggling, obviously. Is there any way to get a message to these guys that this can happen?
Well, I don't know. I mean, I certainly can relate and feel the pain of going through a rebuilding process to this point, because I was part of the 0-21. We lost 107 games. It's a miserable time. But if you can turn it around a little bit and take an optimistic view, is that people are getting some chances to play that might otherwise not. The guys that were in that room up there, they got a chance to play in '89 because of a rebuilding situation. Carved out a pretty good career, became big leaguers. So there's abundance of opportunity, and there's an interesting team. I think the '89 team was a fun team to watch on many different levels. And I think when you have an opportunity and you're a young person and you're going out there playing almost with a little free will and no expectations, and then you find out that you can do it pretty well, I think a lot of people like watching that path. And so I would hope that the young Orioles would not grade themselves so much by the wins and losses at the time, but I mean how they're improving and how that in the future they can win.
Cal, is there a lesson to be learned, though, from that '89 team? If your pitching's not that good, how much that outfield defense, the speed in the outfield means?
Well, I don't know. The pitchers up there, they were talking about, Petey Harness said, and Davey Johnson said they could just throw the ball down the middle. That's the feeling you want to give them, but the first line of defense is the pitchers, and they want to hit not the meat of the bat, they want to hit the end of the bat and the inside part of the bat. They don't want to give up hard hit balls. But I will tell you that the group of guys that we had, they gave them a confidence because they were just making miraculous plays on a regular basis. Yeah. And sometimes you just shook your head at some of the plays that they were making, and it uplifted you and made you happy. But the pitching that year, it wasn't just because the outfield defense was good. They pitched. Ballard could have won 20 games. He was as good as you got. He had a couple of games where it didn't turn out well in the end. That could have been his. Milwaukee came in. Milwaukee was trying to find his way, and he had a sub-4 ERA, kept us in ball games all the time, and was durable. So you need the starting pitching to keep you in a ball game, and then maybe the defense can help, and maybe the offense can figure out a way to score a run. But we had some pretty good starting pitching that kept us in ball games, and then we were able to make the most of the late innings.
Cal, you've been a part of so many great teams, so some not so great teams,
yeah.
and a lot of clubhouses. What do you remember about the '89 clubhouse? And to follow up, is this event today like that clubhouse was back then?
It was fun, and we were, Billy, as my brother Billy was saying, is that we sat back there for the pictures, and we all sat in a team-oriented way. There, it started to flow again as some of the small things that we remember about each other. And Tim Hewlett said that that everyone was a comedian. I don't think everyone was a comedian, but when you're part of a family, all the little warts are identified, and all the joking kind of comes out, and it's always taken in the positive way. It was never. I don't think we had any dissension or any meanness in some of the ways, but everybody was fair game. And so if you did something a little funny in a game, or you had a mental mistake, or you did something like that, you know, it was brought up in a fun sort of way. So I think all of us, I don't think we all felt the pressure because the expectations were lower, but I think we all kept each other in check as the season went on, kept us humble and kept us in our place.
Always great to hear from those guys. Now, last Sunday, Anthony Santander gained 4,000 followers in one game. They were scouts visiting from the UK, and they were seated in left field right behind Santander, and they instantly became diehard fans. One girl actually bought his jersey, one of the best moments of the season at Oriole Park at Camden Yards. And on Wednesday, our social media manager, Olivia Witherite, arranged for a FaceTime call between Santander, accompanied by translator Ramon Alarcon, and those scouts who are currently in Canada completing their trip of this continent. The fun part, though, it was a surprise for the kids. They thought they were just doing an interview with me. It was a whole lot better than that. Take a look.
There are 4,000 scouts here from the United Kingdom. Those scouts from the United Kingdom are now the official international Anthony Santander fan club, and they loved it.
So we're going to get started on this interview in just a sec. But real quick, we have a very, very special guest in studio. Bobby, go ahead and show him.
Hey! We've got someone on the phone for you all. It's Santander!
How excited are you to see the man that you made your fan club about right in front of you?
So excited. Then he kept throwing all of the balls out to us in the crowd, so we were loving that.
Bueno, muy contento, de verdad que I'm very happy. It's such a special moment. I think everybody in the crowd, in the ballpark, felt the energy that you guys brought to the game, and it was just such a cool experience.
Yeah, we loved the atmosphere at the game.
Pero me puse triste cuando se fueron muy temprano. He was sad when he saw you leaving. He wanted you to stay longer.
We didn't want to leave.
Bueno, esperemos que en el futuro, con el favor de Dios, puedan otra vez venirse. He's saying that hopefully, maybe in the future, you guys can come back and hopefully meet again.
Everyone is say bye to Santander!
Hey. Santander, Santander, Santander.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you. Thank you, guys.
Don't forget, the Friday Fireworks and Women of Country Music Series returns tonight at Oriole Park at Camden Yards. It features post-game on-field performances from emerging female country artists after every Friday home game through August 23rd, in partnership with Change the Conversation, a nonprofit organization which fights gender inequality in the music industry. Friday Fireworks and Women of Country Music is part of the Orioles' year-long celebration of women's equality and girls' empowerment. Carter Faith is the performer tonight. She's an up-and-coming singer-songwriter from Davidson, North Carolina. She's currently at Belmont University in their songwriting program. She opened for Cole Swindell down at the Orioles Artists and Athletes Play for Kids charity weekend back in Sarasota in March. She's got plenty of experience. Immensely talented young singer-songwriter. Catch Carter Faith singing the national anthem tonight, and of course the post-game on-field performance. And that's not the only thing happening at the ballpark this weekend. The Orioles are continuing their Saturday roof deck sessions every Saturday home game through August 24th. The sessions feature pre-game performances, both from local artists and national acts, on the Budweiser roof deck out in center field. These unique performances are broadcast throughout the ballpark, and fans looking to get up close and personal with the performers can access the roof deck with any game ticket on a first-come, first-served basis. Special happy hour pricing on select beverages are also available exclusively on the roof deck from the time gates open until the scheduled first pitch. A complete lineup of artists and additional info on Saturday roof deck sessions can be found at Orioles.com/music. Tomorrow's performer, Jeremiah Lloyd Harmon. He's a singer-songwriter based in Baltimore, and he placed 6th on American Idol in season 17. So great, talented performers here at Oriole Park at Camden Yards this weekend. Before we get out of here, do want to remind you about our podcast. Myself and Bobby Blanco are the two hosts. You can listen to it on SoundCloud, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, the MASN All Access Facebook page, YouTube, anywhere you can find podcasts. You can find the MASN All Access podcast. Astros and Orioles coverage beginning tonight on MASN 2 at 6:30. Wade Miley against Dylan Bundy. You're not going to want to miss it. Special thanks to Bobby Blanco, our producer, Amy Jennings, and Olivia Witherite. Tune in to the game tonight. I'm your host, Paul Mancano. Thanks for watching MASN All Access.